I'm so sorry. That's absolutely not the case. I mean, if anything, that would be really nicer.
No. I mean, the troops are based in Ostend, and perhaps he kind of. I imagine at some point said, "Do you not think that we have sovereignty over Ostend?" So I think it was maybe he was Europe, but I think you could. Foreign Office issued some different statements saying she ought to be
Раз, два, три, четыре, пять. Вот эхо такое, да, прямо ощутимое. Да? Но, наверное, сильно это не поможет. А может и поможет.
Нет, лучше сейчас.
Да?
Скажите.
Говорю, разговариваю, продолжаю. Лучше, да?
Может быть, просто вы, потому что более
protocol person how to handle state visits or politics? How did the Shoigu and Wallace look when they went in?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Yes, he's pretty. I know. Yeah. We follow each other.
Did it right there, go and put the roof down. Trust me, go as well. Yeah, that was unusual.
You also said it's going to go in the sense of negative territory. You said they were in relation to a historical level, they're about to go into negative territory.
Батарейку лови сядь. Батарейку лови сядь. 4 часа лови.
Yes. Do you think that you were
Сказали, что все желать давай. А вдруг придет? А ну а, кто в чай живет? Так это то же самое. А вдруг он сразу придет? Только выйти, говорит, просто тему.
number of state having.
I don't know, maybe it'll come down after this week. They kind of go in and have tanks develop.
I think it's less. Be in the hardline camp.
Даже не слышно. Ну, 19 Крымов, хотя бы.
Minsk. What should we
Yeah. So she started kind of
Я думаю, что потому что это банковский, там два дня перепутано. Это говорит, что вообще но другой стороны.
But she is getting defined. So she
Пока молчим. Еще бали зачистка политического пространства. 22 Еще бали ну, подожди, сейчас начну ковыряться. А то тоже 8 ковырев. Он 7. Для профилактики надо. Мне уж скоро. Ну, что это? Для профилактики. Я карате, колоссия. Джонсонский бустер. Ты знаешь, он адвокат Лешка из Китая не вернется, я никуда не могу идти. Надо же быть за один. Я могу там был в этом, сейчас ну да, ну относительно, все равно. Это президентская поговорка, я помню. We're going to start in 50 minutes. Okay, and 20 minutes, 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to chat first, 20 minutes. We'll get it off right after the prison, okay? Now, should we go through the last Вы имеете в виду микрофон на вопрос задавать, да? Ничего страшного. Нет, проходите. Да? Нет, вы проходите, конечно. Нет, это совершенно рабочий момент. Да, если вопрос отойдет, вы отойдите микрофон, отойдете в сторону, да? Тогда отлично. Девушка, а вы же не будете держать как микрофон, о чем вы говорите? Да.
Easy. No need to go live yet, everyone. We're going to start in about 5 or 6 minutes' time. My name's Tom Oppenheim. I'm the press secretary here at the embassy in Moscow. Defence Secretary will join us about 6:05. Please, I will call out the name of your organisation. You may then ask a question. I'd be really grateful if you would keep questions short so that we can get as many of you an opportunity to ask a question as possible. Thank you for your patience. It's very much appreciated. I'm sure you'll understand that programmes of this nature move around frequently. So we are going to try and get you a full 30 minutes with the Defence Secretary before he has to go to the airport. Okay. So I'll be stood over here on the corner. I'll call out the name of an organisation. Please stand up. Olga, who's behind you, with her hand raised in the air, will come and give you a microphone. Please speak into the microphone. That way, all of your colleagues who don't speak your language will be able to understand what is being said. And the Defence Secretary, if you're speaking in Russian, will also understand what is being asked, which is useful. So please do wait for Olga. Speak slowly and clearly into the microphone, and we'll try and get through as many of you as we possibly can in the time that we have. That's a great point, actually. If you're on the front row, if you just raise your hand so that Olga knows who you are and where to bring the microphone, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Any other process questions or problems that people need resolved?
Where are you going to come from?
Sorry?
Where are you going to come from?
That's a very good question. I think we'll just bring him through the main door. Okay. And up the side here, I think, Fliss. Yeah. Masks, thank you all for observing mask wearing. Please continue to do so. When you're asking a question, feel free to demask. Let me just check and see if we can get the Defence Secretary to appear this way and save you turning around. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
But not as a foreign agent.
Just because
Нет, это один. Типа вот.
It's by the is that a what? It's a last floor, yeah, exactly. So it's nice. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird. It's nice. I was thinking today was the first day that
hear me? Is it okay? Yeah. And I made that
It's the embassies, is it? Well, they need to come and fix it. Yes.
Can everybody hear that, or is it all on?
For the translation, you're back.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be speaking to you from the embassy here in Moscow, from the British Embassy, and just to give you an update on my talks with Minister Shoigu and General Gerasimov at the Russian Ministry of Defence. It was a constructive and frank discussion. I was grateful for Minister Shoigu agreeing to meet with me to discuss a range of issues, including the ongoing tensions around Ukraine and the border. We discussed in detail, obviously, Russia's draft treaty that it offered up to NATO and addressed a number of the points. We also both agreed on the importance of the implementation of the Minsk agreement as a clear way forward. I was clear about the tragic consequences that any invasion of Ukraine could have for all people, both Ukrainian, Russia, and the security of Europe. We listened to the assurances given by Minister Shoigu and indeed General Gerasimov that they would not invade Ukraine, and we urged dialogue as a way through to address any concerns that the Russian government may have. I reasserted that our concerns in the West and NATO was as much about the right of a country to choose its future and its alliances as it was anything else. And that right of choice is a choice that has been underpinned by numerous treaties and declarations signed by both Russian governments and indeed Western governments over many years, as far back as the 1970s. I'm very grateful for the meeting today. We discussed other subjects around terrorism and indeed improving our bilateral relationship, as well as looking at confidence-building measures to make sure we address the perceptions that both NATO is more than defensive, when in fact it is a defensive alliance, and indeed other worries that both sides may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. First question goes to the BBC. Harry, Olga. BBC is over here. Just wait, you've got the microphone ready. Okay.
Do you see any willingness from the Russian side to de-escalate the situation if there is no NATO expansion discussion on the table? And if so, what measures do you think could achieve a de-escalation at this stage? And secondly, Secretary Blinken said that an invasion could occur at any time. Do you share that view?
On the last question, the disposition of the Russian forces that we see, over 100,000 in both Belarus and Ukraine, obviously gives that size of force the ability to do a whole range of actions, including an invasion of a neighbouring country at any time. Mainly because of the readiness it is now at. It is an active, obviously, exercise, certainly in Belarus, and of course that is an option that those forces could have. We obviously have made it very clear in NATO that an invasion would have tragic consequences, and we are here, and I'm here today, for example, to seek a way of whatever we can to de-escalate that tension. I heard clearly from the Russian government that they had no intention of invading Ukraine, and I also heard some of their concerns. We feel, as NATO's response to the Russian treaty offer in December, that addressing those concerns can be done through a range of measures, including confidence measures, looking at better transparency, inspections, continuation of some of the existing treaties that have been in place, some of them going back through the Cold War, and also making sure that we are clear about what it is NATO believes is an inherent right of all parties, and I think it's important that people understand what I mean by that, and that is that is enshrined in numerous agreements: the Helsinki Final Act, the Istanbul Summit Charter from 1999, the Astana Summit 2010, and the 1994 Budapest Summit Declaration, which says that each participating state has an equal right to security. We reaffirm this inherent right of each and every participating state to be free to choose or change its security arrangements, including treaties and alliances. That statement is contained in all those declarations and has been signed by both Western governments and the Russian governments in the past, obviously most recently in 2010.
Sun newspaper.
Secretary, thank you. We heard General Shoigu say that relations have been at 0% and at risk of going into negative territory. What number would you put the relations, what percentage would you give relations after your meeting?
Above zero, I think is what I would say. Look, we, of course, Britain has some ongoing issues with the Russian government, not least the poisoning and deployment of nerve agent by agents of the Russian state in Salisbury, and the requests we have obviously out for the people suspected in committing that crime, and that is ongoing and needs to be resolved. However, this is the first meeting of a UK Defence Minister with Minister Shoigu since 2013, so that is 9 years, and I think the beginning of this process, which is to understand each other's concerns, also to be able to have a line of communication, is a lot better than 0%. And I look forward to having an ongoing relationship both with Minister Shoigu and indeed my Chief of Defence Staff having a relationship with General Gerasimov. Because what is incredibly important, especially at this time, with over 100,000 troops at high readiness on the borders of another country, is that we do not get into a position of miscalculation or escalation. And only through those type of relationships and the ability to talk to each other at times of concern can we pave the way for any de-escalatory measures.
Secretary of State, Biden has urged all Americans to pull out of Ukraine. I'm just wondering if you think British citizens should also be doing the same. Thank you.
Well, there's existing travel advice at the moment out that does not, as yet, say all British citizens should leave Ukraine. It says only travel where necessary to Ukraine. We think that's currently the right status to reflect where we are at in the tense situation. Obviously, that's kept constantly under review by the Foreign Office. And should anything change, we'll, of course, make sure you are and the media are the first to know, as well as the people in Ukraine. Thank you. Thanks.
Good evening, Secretary of State. Yesterday, we heard Sergei Lavrov describe his conversation with the Foreign Secretary as like talking to a deaf person. I wondered first what you made of that somewhat undemocratic language, what terms you'd use to describe your exchange and meeting today, and whether your shared military background with General Shoigu helped at all in that.
Look, I think Minister Lavrov is a master at these type of engagements and making those type of comments. I think what I would say is, in our discussion, there was absolutely no deafness or blindness. We, as defence ministers, we bear the responsibility of the consequences of what happens in conflict. Myself, Chief Defence Staff, we are responsible for the men and women of the armed forces, and should anything go wrong, it is they who ultimately pay sometimes the ultimate price, and that is no different from the professional Russian military and indeed Minister Shoigu sitting opposite me today. So we deal with the facts and we deal with the issues we have, because it is in both our interests to resolve that. And I think really that is how we do our business. It's how you'd expect defence to do it. I think we have had a constructive and frank discussion, and I hope it has contributed to a better atmosphere, but also to de-escalation. But there is still a considerable way to go between the two of us, and I shall leave Mr. Lavrov to Mr. Lavrov, although I would make one point that that treaty and declaration quote that I read out, he was, of course, at some stages either the foreign minister or within the diplomatic service of Russia when those very statements were signed. So you might like to address why he thought that was the case then and maybe doesn't now.
Turn to the Russian press for a moment. We'll start with
The UK is one of the countries that provide Ukraine with lethal weapons, and this fact extremely irritates Russian leadership. Given the current negotiations concerning the security guarantees in Europe, would the United Kingdom consider making at least a pause in such supplies, so this factor couldn't hinder the whole negotiation process?
First of all, the weapons we provided to the Ukrainians were defensive tactical weapons. They're not strategic, they're short range. They are designed really for the protection of infantry at short range from armour. They in no way would pose a threat to an external state as long as that state didn't invade that country. So they were specifically limited to that type of capability in order to undermine our belief that people have a right to defend themselves in self-defence, as also does international law give people that right. But they were limited in number. I announced to Parliament that we were making a deployment of them. We would send troops, which we have done, to train them, and when that training was finished, those troops would and will return to the United Kingdom, and that will be done pretty soon, actually. They were there for that purpose only. Of course, I'm happy to explore all those type of measures if it leads to de-escalation, as long as we see the respect of each other's states, and indeed the Ukrainian government, so we can perhaps get back together again to try and make sure that we implement the Minsk agreement, which we think is one of the major planks we could use to get to a better position for all parties.
Радиостанция «Эхо Москвы», Ольга Рычкова. Борис Джонсон заявил об отправке частей ВМС Великобритании в Юго-Восточную Европу. Как скоро они там будут, где они будут находиться и где они будут находиться, если действительно с завтрашнего дня будет перекрыт Керченский пролив и часть Азовско-Черноморской акватории?
Okay. So on the allegation that Boris Johnson said there'll be 600 troops sent to Ukraine, it actually comes from a story in the Daily Mirror that was inaccurate. It was put down to defence sources. Now I'm not going to correctly tell the media, but I wouldn't believe everything you read in the media, to be brutally honest. There has been no plan to send 600 special forces or any forces of that scale to the Ukrainians. As I said openly in Parliament, we sent a small team to train for the defensive weapons we sent, but also we'd always had op-orbital, which was approximately about 100 personnel that were sent there after in 2015, and they draw down and draw up depending on the training task. They have always been declared, but there's been no plan to send 600 special forces into Ukraine at any stage, nor any other type of troops as reported in the article of last year. So I'm afraid it was an inaccurate story. What has happened is over the last few years we've had exercises and training where we had infantry regiments came in small numbers to exercise, and they do a sort of summer exercise and they go back. And then in the Black Sea, we've regularly taken part in patrols. Lots of other countries have, the United States, the Dutch, the French. It is a regular exercised part of the country because of the sea, we believe in upholding the freedom of navigation. We would uphold that freedom wherever we can in the world as a trading nation for seafaring nations. That a UN treaty that provides that freedom of navigation is actually one of the treaties in the world with the most signatures to it. So it's important that we not only demonstrate it, but we uphold it. So we will always continue to patrol. There are periodic patrols of the Royal Navy into the Black Sea. There will be more soon. We declare it in line with the Montrose Declaration, so it's fully transparent, and most of the other countries that do that as well do. That's a requirement of international community to do so. We always make it declared, and we will stick to the international law of the sea.
Если будет закрыт Керченский пролив?
I'm not going to enter into hypotheticals.
Thank you. Customs Agency, I would like to ask, to your mind, is it necessary to align a permanent military channel of communication between Russia and UK, and how soon it may happen? Thank you.
So we've always had one. We've always had a channel to Russia open as on a line effectively for many years, and it is tested every day. But this is about both a political channel and a sort of general staff level channel where we can communicate not only about upcoming issues or issues where there could potentially be areas of mutual agreement or mutual support, but also where there are issues that we would fear could lead to all sorts of problems. So it's building on the current existing capability we have to make sure we have both a political and a military leadership channel open as well.
Secretary of State, did you feel that Russia would be prepared to compromise on secondary issues beyond the issue of NATO expansion, where there's clearly going to be no movement, and whether that would suffice? And also, when they assured you that they would not invade Ukraine, and you looked into Sergei Shoigu's eyes, did you believe him?
Well, look, on the latter question, look, it's all about actions. Currently, there's over 100,000, 130,000 troops stationed at readiness or exercising, plus warplanes, plus ships into the Black Sea, on the borders of Ukraine, and that is an action that is not normal. It's beyond normal exercising, and therefore, I think we will judge that statement on the evidence. I think on the first part of your question, I think there are measures that we can all take. I mean, part of this is a fear that NATO is an offensive organisation, not a defensive. I reiterated that to its very core, NATO is defensive. It's in its articles, it's in its establishment, and we are not interested in dividing and ruling Russia, which was a claim made by the President last July in his article. No one is interested in doing that. In fact, we want strong relationships with the Russian people. We would like strong relationships with the Russian economy. There's lots of opportunities for both British business and Russian business to do more business together. But fundamentally, NATO is not going to give up that belief in self-defence and being a defensive organisation. And as an alliance, it is an alliance that doesn't choose people. People choose NATO. And I think it's very important people understand that NATO doesn't go around the world trying to recruit new people. We let people approach us, and in doing so, then the 30 members have to make that decision. So we made that clear that it is defensive, it will always remain defensive, and we are not seeking confrontation.
You mentioned Minsk, and everybody mentions Minsk, but today the Kremlin spokesman said that the failure of talks yesterday on the Normandy format about Minsk is due to the fact that everybody understands its implementation differently. How do you understand the Minsk implementation, and does the difference of interpretation make it a viable diplomatic tool?
Well, the Normandy format obviously is France, Germany. The United Kingdom isn't there, so in that sense, what I understand of it is effectively what I read in black and white in the same way you do. But what I would say about the challenges of implementing it, I am of the generation of the Good Friday Agreement. Of course, you have the agreement first, and then the trick and the work that you have to do as leaders is to make sure you get a sequence and you get an implementation that is acceptable to all parties. That's the hard work. That's where you roll up your sleeves and you set about doing it. I hope that time is given for that hard work by Russia, by Ukraine, by the parties signatory to it. The United Kingdom will lean in and do all we can to help all parties in that space. But that's the hard bit, and that's what doesn't just begin and end with one meeting yesterday. It will take time. But if we're all agreed that what we don't want is an invasion, and we don't want the tragic consequences of such, then I hope all parties will get on it and try and deliver it. And I know President Macron was keen, and NATO is keen to see that.
That's clear, but Minsk was signed in 2016.
It was a 15 one.
2015.
With Minsk 1 and 2.
Minsk 2, right? So there's been a lot of time for different interpretations, and we're still stuck on the interpretations of Ukraine and Russia. So what can be done to move that impasse?
Well, look, I think diplomacy is what can be done, and we can really lean into it. But you're going to have to ask predominantly the signatories to the Minsk agreement to how much more they can demonstrate they can still do more. I think everyone can still do more, but we will play that supporting role, both as a friend and ally of Ukraine, but also in the hope that we help Russia as well to get to a resolution on it.
Can you tell me whether you think a diplomatic solution, you seem to be optimistic that there is still a chance of that happening. Is this going to be a long-term process? How long do you think it could take before we see any kind of results? Because so far there's very much a stalemate and there's really no sign of any break.
Well, look, stalemate or not, the alternative is either Russia finishes its exercises and that this is not what people in the West fear, that it is in fact an exercise very close to Ukraine with 130,000 people at very high readiness, but it is nevertheless an exercise, or it is a prelude to an invasion. I think all of us, everyone even in this room, everyone watching, would want an alternative to that. So how long? I think I would just say as long as it takes to try and find an alternative to what could be very tragic consequences.
Financial Times? No. No, not yet. We want Andrew, the Guardian. Russia has been very vocal about complaining about foreign supplies of lethal arms to Ukraine, including anti-tank missiles from Britain, as my colleague mentioned before. I was wondering if during the negotiations, Sergei Shoigu made any specific direct attempts to negotiate on that topic, either to hold arms or mention any red lines from the Russian side in terms of what arms would be unacceptable.
Minister Shoigu did raise the issues of lethal aid and arms to Ukraine, asking that they were suspended or stopped. I said, as I said in the answer earlier to the Russian journalist's question, that of course we had delivered a finite number of anti-tank weapons and that we would finish the training and those troops who are doing the training would go home. And I think the other key thing here to remember is, no matter how much of the weapons that are reported have been reported, we've been very obviously open in Parliament, they are dwarfed by the scale of the forces on the other side of the border. Approximately 50% of Russia's land forces are concentrated around that border, and I think it's really important to recognise that the weapon systems that have been gifted by the United Kingdom are in fact self-defence, short-range, and are designed that would only become of use, or certainly only become into play, I suppose, if someone was invading your country and you were trying to defend yourself.
Okay, let's go Telegraph and then the
Telegraph. Secretary of Defense, now that we've met Mr. Shoigu, do you feel more confident that Russia will not go ahead with the ground invasion? And also, if I might, did he offer any explanation as to why this military buildup is happening, what is the timing, how long those troops are going to be stationed close to the Ukrainian border?
Well, but on the latter, and I have to be careful here. Minister Shoigu isn't at the conference. I don't want to put words into his mouth. I think what I would say is that look, he is a professional, he's a very experienced minister, as is General Gerasimov, and when they say to me they are not going to invade Ukraine, we will take that seriously. But as I've also said, we will look at the actions that accompany it. But I also think, what was the other part of your question, sorry?
Did Mr. Shoigu manage to give you any timeline about the troops stationed by the border? How long are they going to stay? Why exactly are they staying there?
No, we didn't get into the details of how long these exercises should go. I know that there's been previous statements by the Russian government that these are exercises that will finish at a certain period of time, and I don't think there was any dispute about that insofar as we didn't interrogate it further. We just wanted to seek that reassurance about invasion.
Secretary of State, as you begin your long journey home, are there any, what do you cling to in terms of positivity as a result of today, or are we where we were this morning in that you believe a conflict is more likely than not?
Well, I think the direction of travel has been against the direction of the diplomatic travel over the last few weeks. We've seen continued build-up of forces as we've seen a build-up of diplomacy, and you would hope that actually one goes up, one goes down, and I think that is why my optimism is not as optimistic as I used to be or can be, and I'm hoping that the beginning today is an effort to try and see if there is a way forward to make sure we do de-escalate. We'll keep trying. I think the international community is trying very hard. Obviously, President Macron's visit, Prime Minister Johnson spoke to President Putin recently as well, and indeed I think the new Chancellor of Germany is coming to visit next week. I think it is very important that we give the Russian government, give them all a chance to provide the reassurance they are seeking about the intentions of NATO, but also to give us the airtime to hear from them their assurances that they have no intention of invading Ukraine as well. I think those are important, and then we can work towards supporting the implementation of Minsk.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your questions. Thank you very much indeed.